Hi, everyone, and welcome to 5 Agile Low-Code Best Practices. Today's webinar is sponsored by Do It Lean, OutSystems, and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Keith Ward, as you might imagine. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm truly excited to be your moderator for this action-packed webinar. But before we get started, we do have some housekeeping items I need to go over that'll help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation to discuss some of the top questions that you ask. So keep those questions coming throughout. Now, that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. First thing you want to do if that happens, anything goes sideways, you can't hear, you're not seeing the slides or whatever, is a browser refresh. That'll fix most of the problems that you have. If that doesn't work, let us know, and we will jump on that and try to provide further technical assistance. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, it's right next to that Q&A tab. You'll find some really important resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to 3 handouts from our vendors. Do It Lean white paper on Agile methods, a PDF from Do It Lean of 5 must-read low-code innovation stories, and a free trial edition link for OutSystems. Now, check out all those free resources right now. Some really good stuff in there. In the handout section, you'll also find a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's vast library of books on technology topics. And you'll also find a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events, including some really interesting ones. If you see something you like, hey, why not sign up now? All right, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. And finally, before we get going, one of the best benefits of this event or any Actual Tech Media events is the opportunity to ask questions of our expert presenters. And to help encourage those questions, we have a special additional prize today for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event's over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the best one, and contact that prize winner. So again, keep those questions coming. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. It is my true pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today, Mike Jones, General Manager for Do It Lean, and John Sullivan, Senior Solution Architect from OutSystems. It is great to have you here today. Looks like you're ready to go. So, Mike, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thanks, Keith. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, 5 Agile Low-Code Best Practices. Today, John and I want to share some insights on delivering new digital applications using Agile processes, but Agile processes tuned to take advantage of the speed of development when you're using a low-code technology. Of course, the broad context for our session today is digital transformation. So perhaps we should start by getting our heads around this often overloaded term. So I took this question from a recent McKinsey article, and I suspect for some of you, this exactly matches your thinking on digital transformation. For others, you may be shaking your head no, as you don't believe your business really needs to shift how they go about doing what they do today to stay relevant. So as John and I talked about this and thought about this presentation for today and some of the different customers that we both get to work with, we find that digital transformation runs the gambit from truly delivering new digital solutions as part of a refined business model to other organizations that are simply just trying to digitalize internal processes, getting rid of things like Excel, SharePoint, and effectively, making them more efficient at the end of the day. So regardless of what's motivating you and some of our reference customers, we find that they all have the same basic challenges to success. And quite frankly, the biggest challenge is that building new digital applications is simply hard. I like to summarize the challenge into three main buckets. And you'll notice I took this slide from OutSystems, but the first one is really competing priorities. And this points out that most IT teams spend the majority of their time simply trying to keep the lights on, keeping what they've got running and keep it working. They don't really have the resources to deliver new digital applications that are needed. And more importantly, they often don't have the necessary skills to deliver the type of customer experience that is being demanded by the business. Compounding the problem is the difficulty of building new applications fast while delivering secure, scalable solutions. So dealing with non-functional requirements is harder than it ever has been. And last but not least, the pace of change is incredible. And success with custom applications really requires multiple iterations. As a new application is rolled out, it needs to be adjusted to meet changing end user demands. So in short, the world around us has changed, but for most, we're still using the same approaches as from the past. And I believe, and John and I both believe, there are better ways. So success today really demands a new approach, as the slide indicates. But for this to be relevant, you have to have the general problem. So let's start by asking everyone to answer a quick poll question. This is simple, guys. Not a huge test, I promise. So let's roll right into it, John. The question is does your company have custom applications as part of your app portfolio? Simple yes or no. Do you guys build stuff? And as you think about that, also remember that things like the Excel that takes 30 minutes to load and gets passed around from one group to another to manage your product evolution or whatever it might be, those are custom apps as far as we're concerned, because those are things that often need to be improved and replaced with true digital applications. All right, we'll give you guys a couple more seconds. Looks like our answers are rolling in. Any surprises, John, so far? If you guys don't know, we get to see it as you vote.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away yet, but it's a nice mix. It looks like there's and it always depends on the definition of what people consider custom too. Like you said, Mike, some people are customizing existing platform, configurations or off-the-shelf products or other things too. So I think it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
All right, guys. Well, it's easy enough, yes or no. We're going to go ahead and move forward. So it looks like 57% of you guys do have custom applications in your portfolio, and a little less than half don't. So very interesting. So some of you guys have this problem, some of y'all don't. So with that said, I wonder, for those of you who've ever been involved in an application development project, if it looked sort of like this. So basically, you took 4 or 5, sometimes 6 months to define the requirements. You worked with a business, you built an as-is model, a to-be model, you wrote requirements, you often wrote technical requirements, then you had a formal requirements review and sign off. Lots of times these were 200, 300 page documents. And then from there you went and you sourced a team and you started to build the software. And lots of times these were long projects. They took 24, 36 months to get the software built and all the integrations done. And you get to user acceptance testing and you're ready to show it to the business. And the end result was a deafening thud. It simply took too long to get working software into the hands of the business. And as a result, the original stakeholders had moved on. The business had changed, and the software, which often costs a lot of money to build, no longer met the needs of business. So, this old waterfall style of development really has led to today's more agile approaches, where speed to delivery of working software is paramount to keeping the business and the development teams aligned. And of course, this is where Agile low code can make a real impact on your transformation efforts. So, application success, I believe, requires change, but it's got to require you to deliver and change new software incredibly fast. So we must build and deliver new applications faster than we ever have in the past. And there are better ways to build software for your business, spanning both technology and processes. So on the technology front, let's dig a bit into a different approach to application development using low-code technologies. So there's lots of definitions out there. So before we go any further, let me share what I think are the big three buckets defining the somewhat confusing low-code, no-code landscape. First, there's what I like to call high code, right? And that's or what the analysts call high code. This is traditional coding, .NET, Java, PHP, etc. The good news is it gives you total control over how your applications are developed. You can, quite frankly, build anything. But on the downside, typically full stack developers are scarce to find. They're expensive. There's a lot of complexity, and it takes a lot of time to build applications using these traditional coding approaches. And probably more important is that once you get one of these applications built, the cost to maintain it and change it is expensive as well. So on sort of the opposite end of the rainbow is what the analysts call no code. This is pure drag and drop development. Sounds simple, and it is. But the reality is you have little control over how your applications are really deployed. It's really used for simple department level apps. And quite frankly, the typical developer here is more of what is called a citizen developer, a good business analyst, et cetera. It's work that can be done out, in the hands of business users. The complexity is very low, and it's pretty fast to build these apps. Another problem that comes in though is that once they get built, it's really hard to change them, scale them, and let them grow up if they need to grow up. The third bucket is what I call low code, or what the industry analysts call low code. And this is model-driven development, except you're able to really direct how the applications are built and deployed. So you have a little more control. You can pretty much build anything. I mean, if you want to build an embedded system with today's low-code products now, that's not what it's for. But if you're building web and mobile apps, business applications, you can do that. But it's really back to sort of that pro developer. And I think the difference between high code and low code is that we can take someone who's deeply experienced in COBOL and is transition them to building native mobile applications relatively easy. Whereas if they had to go handwrite that native mobile app, it'd be very, very difficult. So pro developers, people who understand how to develop software, the complexity is quite a bit lower, and I do get a very fast time to market. And probably the biggest value that's hard for people to appreciate until they get some experience is that the ability to change and maintain a low-code application is dramatically lower than it is if it was traditionally developed. So for many of John and I's customers, the right solution is something that's enterprise grade. It can deliver applications that integrate into their existing application portfolio, and they can build solutions that really allow them to deliver amazing customer experiences while speeding up development and reducing long-term TCO. And I believe that solutions that fit into this category are what OutSystems and I like to call HPLC, or high performance low code. I know you're probably thinking, oh my God, Mike, come on, another term. But in reality, HPLC is simply the high end of the leading low code platforms. But it's really tailored to professional developers for enterprise needs. And it does let you speed up the delivery of a custom application. So what I think makes sense right now is to shift gears. And let me ask John, who's spent a big piece of his career working as a developer in corporate America using low-code technologies to share his insights on, what really separates a high-performance low-code platform from all the other low-code solutions out there in the market. John?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think there's a lot of buzzwords around the low-code community, so I'm glad that you kind of pointed out the definitions out there, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, there's so many different providers in the low-code space today, and what's actually truly fruitful, what's going to produce something of value for your business, and what's actually kind of a dud or maybe something built quickly and not well thought out. So I wanted to describe really the difference between high-performance low-code platforms. And the goal of high-performance low-code is really everything you need to develop enterprise apps at scale. So there's a lot of tools out there that allow you to just quickly turn a spreadsheet into an app. They call themselves low-code, and they have a quick, fancy-looking front end for a minute. But there's not really well-thought-out backends. High-performance low-code gives you the ability to understand and control the UI, data, logic, workflow layers, and not only that, but integration and DevOps as well. So from the CI/CD point of view, AI assistance, automated deployment, database deployment, alter statements in the database, there's so many different things that go into deployment of successful enterprise apps at scale. And that's where high performance low code sets itself apart from other low code providers, if you will. And it really starts with a core cloud native platform, taking advantage of those cloud native capabilities, such as scale, security, performance, and really flexibility in the end. They're full stack in nature. So typically, like I said, you can design UI. A lot of times there's drag and drop components for different types of widgets. The most common widgets out there, carousels, tables, mobile designs. And then you hook those widgets up to logic of different sorts. So that logic could be internal logic, client-side logic, push notifications on a mobile app. And then there's even processes that run too with a userless state. That's where our workflow comes into play as well. If there's approval processes, form submissions, certain requirements that need to listen for other events to trigger off, for an order to be received or something else to be scanned in, those processes could be listening for those changes and affect data and continue on with other processes. In the end, you have to connect it to all your data sources as well. So not just native databases, but NoSQL as well, API data sources as well. And that gets us into the integration point of view. So there's a lot of different REST and SOAP APIs you might need to connect to, just other cloud native services and the like out there in the enterprise application world. The goal is to not take over all that, although it could. It's for the small businesses that really need to develop that from scratch, it definitely could. But we want to integrate, and high performance low code can integrate with your existing environments, including the DevOps process. So traditionally, you have a dev, test, and production environments. You can push and pull back and forth for those, provide hot fixes, and understand the monitoring of application performance. All this can be included in a high-performance low-code, which really gives you the widest range of experiences out there, from sharing web and mobile resources to API, to chat, voice, SMS, and email integrations as well. But as you know, Mike, high-performance solution is not a silver bullet by any means.
No, that's exactly right, John. So success does require some process as well. And this is where Do It Lean helps with our design thinking processes and our Agile low-code approach. So I know most of us are practicing some form of Agile. So let's start with the notion of design thinking, because I find that that's something that certainly when I talk to a lot of enterprise architects, they don't lead these types of efforts. So the design thinking is something that Do It Lean's been investing in now for several years, and trying to embrace and improve our ability to help customers come up with amazing customer experiences. And quite frankly, it's not rocket science at the end of the day. I think there's process really helps, but the idea is to understand what the problem is, so empathize, and then try to define why it's so important. And then once we understand that, then we can begin to ideate on ways to solve this particular problem. And once we've come up with some good ideas, then our designers typically get involved to prototype what a user interface might look like. And these are typically high fidelity mock-ups, so they're clickable, at least on the key screens and key buttons and links, etc. So they can prototype, and then we use people to test, real world end users to test those prototypes. And once we get it right, so this is a constant evolution that typically goes over a 2 to 3 week period, then we can build a plan. Now, we do this type of work in what we call a discovery experience. So a discovery experience, as I said, is a 2 to 3 week exercise where we work across different business lines to gather context, identify goals and roadblocks, make sure that we've got all the different involved end users identified and accounted for so that we can design and envision the right customer user experience. Coming out of a design or discovery experience is some key deliverables. And the most important, I believe, is what we call a vision document, which really captures all of our finding, the key strategies, et cetera. And we also define our high fidelity mockups, which is what allowed everyone to visualize the proposed application. And then the third one is a high level architecture design. So we want to make sure we understand how this new piece of software is going to fit into the overall application portfolio. And then, of course, last but not least, is a project plan, including resource models and associated costs for building the defined solution. And what this does is this gives, both the business and the technology teams everything that they need to go make, not only an aligned, but an informed decision based on whether or not they want to proceed in building this particular piece of software. So, to sort of accomplish this, we do need some key resources, right? So, I think I jumped 2 slides, sorry. From our customers, there's the key stakeholders, okay, and business sponsors. So these are the ones that are setting the strategy and goals. Then we typically have key subject matter experts in different areas who can help us define business requirements. And we like to have actually a different group, key users, people who would actually use this software. They're going to be super important in testing the high fidelity mockups. And then last but not least, our customers need to provide some application architecture support so we understand how this needs to fit into their overall environment. And then we typically bring a handful of key resources, an engagement manager who sort of coordinates and manages the whole effort. We have a solution architect who works on our side to understand and work with the technical team from the customer to make sure that we're architecting this application to meet their scalability requirements and all those non-functional requirements. We have a UX lead who leads sort of the methodology around the overall experience. And then we typically have a UI expert who's doing the high fidelity mockups. With that said, the end result and what gets our customers most excited, of course, is being able to see the high fidelity mockups. And I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with tools like InVision, but those tools allow you to build a very high fidelity, actual looking user interface that's clickable. So this is an example we did for a customer recently that had a fairly complex process workflow. And I know these screens are sort of small, but as you look, as you click through the process, you're able to see how the screens are changing. And you can actually see what the navigation looks like until you finally get through this complex process. And by showing an end user what that looks like, even though we haven't invested a ton of time in writing software, it's very, very powerful. So that's the notion of a design experience, discovery experience. But and it's really all about getting everyone aligned behind the vision. However, the real challenge is keeping everyone aligned during development. So in my opinion, addressing this challenge has given rise to, the various software development lifecycle approaches with Agile getting the most widespread adoption. So why don't we pause here, John, and ask the audience. I know it's about half of the guys out there listening today are building software. So let's see how many of them are using Agile. So guys, as we thought about how to shape this question, does your company use Agile practices? Well, we know some of you probably just use Agile methods. So if that's the case, click that one. The other answer is now we use more of an Agile waterfall approach because there's a lot of people who still do that. Some are just starting to adopt an Agile way of working. And then obviously there's a percentage of you guys who don't build software. So we'll give you guys a couple more seconds to let the questions roll in. John, any thoughts on what we're seeing so far?
No, I know it's nice again that we have a good mix of people from different backgrounds. So that probably adheres to the results we're going to see showing up on the screen.
All right, still changing a little bit. All right, I think we're locked in. So guys, whoops, one more last change. All right, so there you have it. About 30% of you guys are using Agile methods. Very cool. Some are using still sort of a Scrum Fall or whatever you want to call it, an Agile waterfall approach. Some are starting to adopt, and then we still have a percentage of you guys who really aren't building software today. Fair enough. So, as I suspect, a lot of you who do build software are using some form of Agile, so that's cool. So let's take a look at Agile, but let's take a look at it from the perspective of Agile low-code development. And let me share some of the best practices that we've learned when you had the speed of low-code powering your development team. So this is sort of, our high-level approach, 5 major stages. It's Scrum-based. It should look fairly familiar to most of you guys. And I think there's about 3 unique things I want to share here. The first one is that we set what we call a project time box. And we're able to do this because OutSystems works the same way, regardless of the customer we're working for. And that gives us a huge advantage because it's very, very consistent. And what that means from a requirements perspective is that I can take a fairly high-level set of requirements and estimate them using a pattern-based approach. And the estimates based on the patterns are what's unique because OutSystems is the same way. So I can all of a sudden do a fairly consistent, repeatable approach to estimating a project and then setting what we call a project time box. So from high-level requirements, I can identify it's going to take X number of weeks with these resources to build this particular piece of software. So that's called a project time box. And we're still Agile because within that project time box, we may take some of the original requirements out and put some new ones in, but we're still going to try to deliver on time and in budget. The second thing that we've learned over the years is this notion of an integration sprint. So with low code, I can build incredibly fast. So when I come out of an initiation, which is like a 1 or 2 week project preparation phase, if there's a lot of dependencies on legacy applications, and we sort of knew that going in, but what we typically find out during initiation is how well formed those APIs are. If they're not really baked and ready, then we'll pause the project for sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes a little bit longer, to allow our customers' internal teams to get those APIs ready. So that's the concept of an integration sprint before we get started, because once we start building the software, we're going to go incredibly fast. And if those APIs aren't ready, well, it's going to impact our delivery capability. The third thing at the high level is what we call post-production tuning. A lot of people talk about hypercare and applications gone to production. We want to be around to support it, but post-production tuning is a little different. Once we go live with the working software, lots of times it's to a limited release to a small group of, beta or initial users, whatever you want to call it. But what we like to do is we like to sit with as many of those folks as we can to see how they're using the software, what little nagging things are there that they don't like, and then quite frankly, go fix them. So what's really unique during post-production tuning, once again, a week, sometimes 2 weeks, is that we'll typically push 2 to 3 releases a day to production. So what we're really trying to do is make those little tweaks that really drive adoption of the application, because at the end of post-production tuning, the key business people that we were playing with, that were using this to begin with, they love the application so much, it's become theirs, that they go tell the rest of the folks and it gets adopted very, very nicely. So those are 3 key things that are different at the high level. And then, of course, when you drill into a sprint, there's a couple of things that you have to understand when you've got a low-code capability driving your delivery. So one, you've got to have access to decision makers, because you've got a 2-week sprint, which is fairly common these days, but the amount we can deliver in 2 weeks is huge. And we put a bunch of requirements in backlog, and if it takes 2 or 3 days for someone to make a decision on whether we should go right or left, you've really impacted our ability to deliver. So One, that business sponsors got to be ready to make decisions fast. The second one is we have to prepare the business, whether it's the actual end users or the QA team, but we have to help them get their head around what it's going to be like to get working software every 2 weeks, a lot of new features, and to get all those tested and get feedback back into the team so that we can keep the Agile process rolling. I harp on this with every new customer. Every one of them underestimates this. So if you're going to go down the low code road and you're going to bring in some expertise to help you, you're going to need to have your business folks really aligned and ready to jump in and execute on their end of the bargain. So, John, why don't you share some more thoughts on OutSystems, because that's where our real expertise is, and what makes the platform itself unique?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so OutSystems, just as an analyst point of view, there's other market analysts that definitely highly regard us, and we've gotten a lot of accolades. We even have the patent and trademark of the #1 low-code platform out there, just because we have the most number of apps of any low-code provider in production. We've been around for 21 years now. We got started in 2001. I guess it's 22 years now as the date changes. And we have the most number of developers globally too. So 500,000+ people are using OutSystems, which leads to a great community of help online. When I was a former OutSystems customer, I was able to Google, just like I can Stack Overflow, any question I had just randomly. And chances are someone had that same issue and was able to help me really quick if I didn't already find the answer there. So definitely we compare very favorably to a lot of low-code platforms out there. But I think more importantly, it's our approach. And when you look at the typical business approach out there of CEO agenda wants amazing customer experiences and fast agility to be able to change and be nimble to the market. But CIO or CTO really wants modern architecture, legacy, tech debt to a minimum. They want to be able to hire the top tech talent as well. And OutSystems can help bring these to both sides, really. And first, you can use the skills that you have. So I think we have the best blend or best spectrum of developers that can be successful on the platform. From senior developers, like you mentioned, Mike, the COBOL developers might be ready to retire. They can come in and pick up the platform because it follows traditional programming paradigms. Some other platforms out there have kind of an odd way to look at the model approach, different metadata models between how the data is hooked up instead of a true SQL database behind the scenes, maybe a runtime interpreter as well too. So OutSystems has the best blend of developers that can be successful because senior developers are productive, but then junior developers just out of college can be successful too because there's warnings for security and scalability and performance really in line as you're coding. So those things make junior developers better developers as well. We also have a modern architecture. So it has changed in the past and it will change in the future, but OutSystems produces standard code. So your drag and drop and visual ability is great. It's really self-documenting. You can see what other users have done in their drag and drop logic and code, but you don't have to re-platform for the latest technology of tomorrow and of 5 years from now. As a former developer, that's one of the hardest things I had to deal with is what is the latest, most modern technology out there. If I'm an expert in something, I got to study that for a while, but also I want to stay abreast to what the latest technology is too. OutSystems compiles to the latest technology, which is React today in the front end, .NET in the back end, and you don't have to really worry about that because your drag and drop code will be converted via our compiler to standard code of the future. And then it's really just the fast continuous agility. So you can share resources between web and mobile apps, which really gives you a single pane of glass to develop on. Develop once, deploy anywhere, convert that to offline syncing ability, push notifications, native mobile widgets, and you can share tons of resources between all of your library of applications. And so looking at a typical .NET environment out there, there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of staff. There's a lot of investment in these services and that staff and that technology to be successful. OutSystems can integrate with a lot of these, native databases, even your DevOps process, Power BI embedding and whatnot. But the goal of OutSystems is to have less resources or maybe more finite resources in certain areas. So those resources can span the spectrum of the development lifecycle. You can have experts in your DBAs, you can have experts in front end, and they can be even more successful in OutSystems, building faster. But the goal is you don't have to have so many resources involved in the DevOps process throughout the whole life cycle. Other low-code platforms allow you to build an app quick. I mentioned this kind of in the beginning. You can really get to first value pretty quickly in a lot of platforms to build some sort of screen, some sort of quick POC or use case. But then they kind of didn't think about the next steps after that. Sometimes there's authentication that needs to happen via different authentication mechanisms, an internal authentication and external authentication. Maybe you're selling an app to customers and they want to authenticate in different ways too. That's just one feature besides all the plethora of integrations and just use cases and maybe visual features, pixel perfect styling. Eventually you hit a wall at some point. And when you hit that wall, it really hurts your TCO because you have to start over again with some sort of traditional code. The goal of OutSystems is to let you build quick, simple apps. You still have those templates to create first value quickly, or you can build larger apps, like Mike's team does at Do It Lean. They can build you a nice application from start to finish, enterprise grade, and then allow you to maintain that, tweak it, and change it going forward. So that maybe next year your branding changes. You can insert a new theme to your environment to update your branding very quickly instead of having to rewrite all of your apps. Maybe authentication mechanisms or data sources or a data lake is installed. There's so many different changes that can happen. OutSystems is flexible to allow all those changes to grow with you over time. So that's my quick spiel on OutSystems, but Mike, I'll send it back to you to wrap it up.
All right, thanks, John. So I guess for our audience today, the real question is Agile low-code development right for your company? And quite frankly, we've helped a lot of organizations from around the globe. Some of these logos are European and Asian, actually, but we've helped a lot of customers across a lot of industries of all different shapes and sizes, from startups to universities and nonprofits, to some of the largest organizations in the world, Chevron, Takeda, et cetera. So low code truly can help you address your digital transformation needs. And we think our process really will help you be successful. We've leveraged high performance low code across lots of different types of challenges, whether it's customer experience transformation, workplace innovation, process innovation, or application modernization. The platform does a very, very good job in all of these different types of challenges that our customers face. I thought I'd just give a couple quick examples. One is Rico. I think we've all probably heard of Rico. These guys won an innovation award from OutSystems last year for this particular application, but they're basically, transitioning from a traditional manufacturing hardware related company into more of a services firm. And we're helping them build a whole series of applications that make up their intelligent decision platform. And it's been a great experience working with them. This is one of the solutions that we've helped them deliver. So they're all about building systems of engagement as part of a transformation effort. Another great example is UGI. This is a utility company on the East Coast. They had a 20-some-year-old legacy application, web-based app. It's where their suppliers nominated what their daily gas transmission was going to be, et cetera. Had all their customer-facing stuff, and they needed to rewrite it. It was basically going to fall down if they didn't do something. And it was a 22-week effort. So you do the math there. It's a little over 4 months. From start literally to in production, up, running, rolled out, transformation done, data transformation done, et cetera. So it was a very cool project. They were very, very happy. It took them a long time to get the original built, and to get the replacement. That was a great facelift and improvement in 22 weeks. They were a little surprised, and as you can imagine, I'm very, very happy. So with that said, John, let me wrap up. Basically, in summary, today's digital transformation efforts, I think, require you to build fast, get small incremental deliverables in front of users, get feedback. You got to do this, but you can't sacrifice quality. And this really requires a mix of technology and process enablers. On the technology front, we're obviously suggesting today use low code, and specifically OutSystems high performance low code. And on the process front, you need to adopt techniques that allow you to keep both business and really the technology teams aligned. And that's where the notion of design-led thinking comes in, and these discovery experiences I talked briefly about, and agile processes. But agile processes tuned to really take advantage of the speed of low code. So with that said, we shared 5 agile low code best practices, set a project time box, make sure if you need an integration sprint, you plan for it. Take advantage of the consistency of OutSystems and the speed to deploy so you can do post-production tuning. As I said, multiple releases per day. I know that can scare people, but it's a reality. All of our customers do it. And then make sure you have access to your decision makers. Got to have decisions turned around very, very quickly and prepare the business to be ready to test. So that's all we have for today. Thank you very much. I think we're going to turn it around and open the floor to questions. You up for that, John?
Sounds good.
All right. Gentlemen, this was a great presentation. I used to actually run a software developer magazine. You may have heard of it. It was called MSDN. This was many moons ago. So there was back then it was pretty much all waterfall, monolithic development. It's so interesting to see how far things have come since then, and how far we are past that now. So, Mike, it looks like we've lost you for a second here. I'm going to bring you back in. Oh, I'm not sure where you went. Anyway, so John, for right now, why don't we go through some questions, and if we spot Mike again, we will bring him back in. It looks like he might be having a technical issue at the moment. All right, so you ready, John, to go over some questions?
I am. No worries.
Okay, excellent. So, who is the typical user of OutSystems? I don't know if you have something like that, a really general sort of question. What does that customer profile look like for you?
Yeah, the typical user is, and like I said, there's a good spectrum of developers that can be successful on the platform, from senior developers to even juniors just out of college that can be successful with some of those warnings and scalability features. But it's really anyone who needs to create some sort of customization that they weren't able to get somewhere else. Typically, if you have unlimited resources, unlimited funds, traditional development is a great way to go. If you have the time, if you have the expensive resources, you can do that. If you're the Netflixes of the world, the Googles of the world, not everyone is that though. They need to develop something faster. So typically, it's someone who needs to bring something to market or bring something to their internal users, whether it's external or internal, and they need to do it fast. And the ways they have today aren't working, and that backlog is growing. So people have started jumping on the low-code bandwagon to just move faster is the goal.
That is for sure. All right, let's follow on and ask something related. So, existing .NET/Java developers, how do they typically react to the low-code paradigm when they're looking at it?
Yeah, good question. That's someone I talk to every single day, and I was one in my past development life. And I think, like my first impression, and a lot of senior developers' first impressions of the platform, is okay. There's some visual nature. This is cute. There's some quick things I can do, but where is it going to fail at? There's got to be some point of failure or weakness or places that I really can't get things done. And the goal of really OutSystems, 97% of what you need to do is honestly done through drag and drop code. There's not really much else to prove that other than trying a free version. I see developers every day that are able to say, how can I get X done? And I say, well, here's a quick shortcut on how to do that. But if you can spend a week or two learning the platform, you're going to be way ahead. You're going to understand a ton of features and how things are done, and it clicks. I see that all the time. And it's one of my favorite things to see in customers is the click of, okay, I get it now. There's so many things you can do, even extending custom code as needed, compiling it alongside.
Those light bulb moments are nice, to see, aren't they? When it kind of all comes together. Okay, next question is about the learning curve. Okay, so for someone coming from another environment to OutSystems, what is the curve like? Is it hard to learn? Is it long? What's your sense of that?
It really depends on their background, I would say, and their willingness to adapt. So someone that's being forced into it might not be as apt to learning it versus someone that's really excited to develop some content and get something out there. Senior developers definitely pick up on it faster because it follows traditional programming paradigms, as I mentioned earlier. Screen life cycle of mobile apps. If you understand offline syncing and how that works, you don't have to have a great understanding of that. But if you understand some data management, that will help. Object-oriented programming is definitely a plus if you have that background as well. But we've seen art students at some of our universities, business analysts come in and create applications. They're able to definitely produce some successful features, and that's what gives us that scale of user types from very simple users to extremely complex senior developers.
Okay. And it can be, it takes time like anything, but you have to look at the potential benefits once you get there too, and all the time saved and the efficiencies gained and things like that, once you learn it. So it looks like we have Mike again. I see him. So Mike, we are going to, there you are, Mike. So good to see you. The gremlins have attacked you apparently this afternoon, the tech gremlins.
Yeah, I apologize, guys. Hopefully you heard my last words.
No problem at all. So, yeah, absolutely. John and I have gone through a bunch of great questions. We've had some excellent feedback, and so I've got a couple for you since we have a couple of minutes left here, if you're ready. So, you mentioned in your presentation, Mike, about an integration sprint. So, how long is one of those sprints typically, or is there a typical length for something like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's no real specific time. What I typically see though is it's 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and it really just it's sort of dictated based on the number of integrations and how mature the APIs are, before we can really get started. So 2 to 4 weeks is the best answer.
That feels pretty darn fast to me. When you're talking about the developer world where things tend to go slow, that feels very fast. Okay, I think we have time for one more question here, and then we'll start wrapping this up. So, you also mentioned discovery experiences in your presentation, Mike. Do they need to be face to face? Or can they be done remotely in this area of remote work?
Well, as I think I mentioned, we started doing this several years ago, middle of COVID. So we were doing them remote to begin with. As COVID is eased up and we're back to, I don't want to say business as usual because that's not true anymore. But as we're back to business, we prefer to do them face to face. Now, typically we don't fly a bunch of people to meet our customers. But maybe if it's a 2-week discovery, as I said, we'll go spend 1 week on site. We'll get to know people. We'll build some relationships. We'll gather a lot of information. Then we'll go back and do the second week remote, and do the final wrap up and presentations all remotely. But it can be done completely remote. That's how we sort of started when we first started doing these. But face-to-face is always better.
All right. I think we do have time. I want to fit in one more question for you, Mike. So Paul wants to know, can Doit's lean agile approach be implemented with equal efficiency to in-house teams using low-code development?
Yeah. Absolutely. We probably spend as much time helping customers by building software applications for them as we do coaching their teams and helping them get up to speed and taking advantage of not only the low-code platform itself, but also of the process, because the process is, at the end of the day, is really the secret sauce to help you get the maximum value out of your low-code investment.
Okay, excellent. All right. Final question for both of you, but first I want to mention to everyone again about the handouts that are in your handouts tab. So there's 3 great ones from both companies here. There's a Do It Lean white paper on agile methods. There's a Do It PDF of 5 must-read low-code innovation stories. And then for OutSystems, we have a link to a free trial edition of using it. So these are things that you really need to get your hands on, download, look over, and start using. But the final question, first for you, John, and then for you, Mike. For those who want to get started with OutSystems and then with Do It Lean, what do you recommend is the next step that they take today?
John?
Yeah, if I'm going to go first, definitely the free version online. You can go to try.outsystems.com if you have someone technical, developer mindset that wants to get their hands on the platform. And that's me speaking from experience, something I enjoyed playing with. If you don't have a technical person, our chatbot online is managed by a nice team that's able to work you through getting a demo set up if you like, or just talking more about your projects, because OutSystems might not be a fit for you. There's certain cases, if we'll be honest with you, if it makes sense for a certain environment, certain use case, we'll be happy to talk through that in more detail and be honest with you.
Great. And it's real people doing that, not just some AI bot, right?
Walking right.
through it. So, yeah, that's what people want to know. Okay, Mike, for Do It Lean, what should they do next?
Yeah, I mean, most of our customers that are getting started, they come to us. They're interested in OutSystems. They come to us and say, "Hey, we want to help. You're the experts. We want you to help us understand. Can we achieve our customer experience? The design that we want to achieve. Will it build the app that can we build the apps that we really need to build? And then how can you help us get started? Whether that's build the first project form and usually what we call co-delivery. But that's how we get started. Is really just as sort of that coach about our real world expertise and whether this thing will work for them or not. And lots of times that does lead to us helping them and make it and helping them buy the platform. But we usually start there.
And I mean, it can be a little intimidating to get started to change the way you've always done things. But again, when you see the benefits that come from speeding up these processes, from creating software more quickly, getting out there more quickly, getting to market more quickly, all of these advantages that you see, it feels to me like kind of a no-brainer. So Mike and John, I want to thank you so much for being here today, for your presentation. It was so much fun to have you. Appreciate your insights in the Q&A. Mike, I want to thank you for logging back in, for fixing whatever was broken and rejoining us again. It's been a real delight to have you both on today.
Our pleasure.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Bye.
And that's almost a wrap for us today, everyone. Such a fun time with them. So before we wrap up, though, we do have one more thing that we are going to do. And I'm going to bring it up right now. That is the Amazon gift card. We got to give that sucker away. $250. As I mentioned at the top, and as I also said, you do have to had to have been present during the entire presentation to be eligible for this. And we do have a winner for today. The winner of our $250 Amazon gift card is Angela Jones from Kansas. Congratulations to you, Angela. We'll be in touch with you very soon to get your card. And folks, with that, we're done here today. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Do It Lean and OutSystems for making this event possible. It was a pleasure to be here with you. Thank all of you attendees for showing up, for spending part of your day with us, for your great questions, for your engagement, for your interest in this topic. It was really a delight, as I mentioned, to be here. This is why we do it. We do it for you, and we're so happy that you could be here with us. And that concludes today's event. Look forward to seeing you in the next one, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.